Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from. My name is Frederick Douglass Bussey, and I am the host of the Power Lunch Podcast. Welcome to episode 71. Today we're talking about how to build empires in reverse. Wait, what? Yeah. In the middle of uncertain economic times, economic storms swirling all around us, how can we build a business that can not only survive and sustain, but to thrive? What's the manner of thinking that we need to be thinking about? What questions should we be asking? Let's figure it all out. And Power Lunch starts right now. Welcome to Power Lunch. I'm your host, Frederick Douglass Bussey. I am the founder of Icon Status Coaching and Consulting, founder of a few other businesses as well, serial entrepreneur for over 20 years. And one of the things that I have come to learn is how to think about business, how to think about being successful, how to continue to strive and thrive no matter what is going on in the environment around us, in the world, the economy, whatever the case may be. How do you create your own economy? How do you build things that are sustainable and powerful no matter what? Hello, Amy. How are you? Glad to see you again today. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for all of you stopping in and checking us out today. And we're going to be asking a few key questions that I think will be valuable for you, things that I've kind of picked up over the years and I'm continuing to pick up from other great entrepreneurs, other great thinkers in terms of just how to preserve. And these aren't just thoughts that we use in terms of business, but if you can't apply it in real life to your regular personal life as well, then how powerful can the concept really be, right? And so what we want to do is want to continue to lean into these thoughts and understand and be able to build that out as well. Now, if you're watching this on Facebook or LinkedIn, feel free to comment below. Let me know where you're commenting from, where you're watching this, what's going on in your world. Let me know what your business is, for instance, and what you've got going on. So we can always be sure that we can tailor this content so that it's as valuable as possible for you, no matter what. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, make sure you give us a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. If you are, and I want to kind of give a bigger framework or context for this whole conversation as well. It's funny, I was talking to someone yesterday, and it put me in the frame of mind about who it is that we're doing this for. I've been having this ongoing conversation with my coaches, Chad and Holly Oxtad, and just, what is the movement that I want to be able to create? And I think that we are seeing, because we are more aware than ever of social media, has made us more aware of ever. We have awareness or insight into the dealings of high level individuals, entrepreneurs, business leaders, whatever the case may be. And whatever level you're at, if you're parallel and looking over, if you are coming up, rising up in your business and you're still trying to figure certain things out, one of the things that can often be a challenge is looking at the human frailties, the faults, fraud, theft, greed, whatever the case may be, different things that come up. And it's like, how do we navigate through that? And what I want to be able to do is not only to build a business with integrity and character, but also to be able to empower other entrepreneurs to be able to do that as well, other leaders to be able to do that as well. And so one of the things that we're talking about today includes how do we set those things up so that, one, we can not only survive the storm, weather the storms that come up, but we can come into a place where we can own that space to dominate and be the ones that really own and lead the conversation going forward, so that it's not just trying to throw rocks at the castle from the outside, but you're actually able to lay siege to an old, outdated way of thinking and be able to install your own empire that can now lay claim to the future, lay claim to the things that really matter going forward. You may or may not want to dream that big, but I want to be there for big dreamers and big thinkers. And because that's what inspires me. And what I'm finding is that these are the types of things that we need to be able to think about in order to empower us to build the most impactful businesses possible. Freedom means that you have absolute autonomy over your decisions and your ability to respond. You have as many options at your disposal as possible. And what a lot of people think is that freedom is a absence of responsibility anymore. Like I don't have to answer to anyone. What you find is that the higher you go, the more people you actually have to answer to. But because you have the money, many people often feel like they don't. And I think that is one of the most dangerous thought processes that actually gets people in trouble, because that is the point at which you can start to lose it all. That's when you could put it at risk. I was listening to a breakdown of Elon Musk's business empire and the things that he's been building, right? And listening to the capability that he has to be able to build $1 trillion, $2 trillion net worth, which would be insane to think about, that someone can have that much money and that much power and that much influence coalesced into one person, one single entity. But whether or not you trust Elon is less the point than, are you maximizing your own capability in your own business to be able to build something that is equally, if not more, impactful? Maybe not in dollars and cents, but in terms of being able to help turn the levers of the world, to shape society, to be able to do good in the world, to be able to help people. Are you maximizing that opportunity? And so, with that being said, the challenge to that is most present for most people is simply, how do we navigate that when we're not sure what's going to happen? So I hear a lot of successful gurus, entrepreneurs, or whatever, and it's like they rise to a certain level and they start fear mongering, they start conspiracy theory um, threads and conversations, and they're always pointing and throwing rocks and saying these people are out to get you, and this is coming for you. And I have no doubt, you know, I'm not an idiot. I'm a realist, and looking at the world, you can see that there are many different things that are many forces that are conspiring to bring us down, right? Some intentional and some because that is the way of human nature. That is the way of the world. Entropy is the way of the universe, right? So we have to bring intention to bear on everything that we're doing, or chaos will ensue, right? Entropy is a measurement of, or the acceleration of disorder. And so in order to, and literally in order to order things in our world, we must bring order and intention to bear on that. Which means that if you're facing a recession, if you're facing things that are going, that are level of uncertainty, what are the things you can put in place? What are the elements you can install to be able to ensure success at the highest possible level every single time? How do you, as to borrow Dan Nicholson's uh, book title, how do you rig the game? How do you rig the game in your favor so that losing never becomes an option, right? So that you are assured of victory. Victory is inevitable, not hopeful. And we understand that there are certain things that we can't control, but all things being equal, with the things that we can control, what are the things that we can do to be able to ensure that we're doing that? And that's why this episode is entitled "Building Empires in Reverse." Right? A great thinker once said, "Start with the end in mind." Right? You want to start with the end, where it is that you want to end up. What is the optimal, what's the outcome that you're trying to create? And I ask this question to my clients week after week after week. What is the outcome that you are trying to create this week? Right? Being super clear on that should drive you forward. Um, one other thought on this, right? And we're talking about building empires. Empires are massive reaches, kingdoms that have learned how to stockpile resources They have armies. They have rations for famine. They have weapons to be able to fend off or even to go and conquer new territory, whatever the case may be. They have great thinkers and leaders and generals. Hopefully, that's what you have. If you have a dictatorship, you are trying to coalesce that around yourself. But an empire is really an infrastructure designed to rule for centuries. And I love that word, that thought. When people talk about generational wealth, they're talking about being able to leave something to their children and their children's children. But if you think about building an empire, you're thinking about, how do I leave something to my children's 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 grandchildren? Something that is installed in such a culture that it's a way of life, it is a way of living, it is a way of being that they themselves can pass on to others, almost like breathing, right? And if you want to build a business with that in mind, and understanding that few businesses last more than 20 years now. The average lifetime of a business used to be around 50, 60 years when you got to a certain level. Now it has become a half-life of that, 10, 20 years before it's sold off, chipped off, or merged into another company. And many businesses that are being built now are actually becoming features or benefits of other businesses later on, right? So how many businesses were built by or acquired by Yahoo or Google or Amazon that are now just features or elements that are hiding inside of their business? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But my point of view is that even if that is the eventual outcome, you could still be thinking about how can I build my own Amazon, my own Procter and Gamble, my own DuPont, my own Apple, my own IBM, or whatever the case may be. How do you continually to how do you engineer the evolution necessary to be able to survive over time, right? So with that being said, there's a few questions that I've been asking myself, questions that I've cobbled together from other people, really 7 questions that we're going to run through very quickly and just kind of expand on that and give you some food for thought. And I love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you're watching this on replay, let me know what you're discovering with the hashtag replay, and just let me know what comes up for you as we're talking about that, right? So number 1 is to consider both the ideal optimal outcome and the minimal acceptable outcome, right? And I put that in 2 competing questions, right? What would be amazing if it happened, right? What would be an amazing outcome if it happened? The versus what would be a relief if it didn't happen, right? So what would be an amazing outcome means we've hit the tip top, we've crossed $1 billion, we're able to do X, Y, and Z, articulating that as specifically and clearly as possible, so you know what the ideal outcome is, right? That's what you really want, and you're hoping and you're building and aiming for. But then the minimal acceptable outcome means, and for a lot of people that just means survival, but what I frame that in the terms of what would be a relief if it didn't happen, if my business didn't implode, if I didn't file for bankruptcy, if these XYZ things didn't happen, what would be a relief? So if I'm standing on the other side of the bridge and I'm saying, I'm glad that didn't happen, what are those things, right? Because those are the very things that I want to make sure that I am built. I have bulwarks there to make sure that those things don't happen. That thing didn't happen. The act of God, if you will, right? And then on the other side, I'm building towards that, but I also have the stopgap to make sure that I don't lose, right? So in trading, you have like what we call a stop loss, right? Which means that at a certain point, if the price drops below a certain level, you have a sell order, right? Or a buy sell order, whatever. But the idea is that I don't want to lose any more if it goes below this point. Therefore, I'm going to cash out my chips and move on. I want to make sure that I maintain a certain amount of money, right? I want to minimize the loss, or I want to make sure that I break even. So once it gets below a certain point or it gets to a certain point, I'm going to sell. I'm out of the game. Well, in business, you may not be out of the game, but you want to make sure that you have a stop loss there. What are the things that can get you out of a bad deal if necessary and get you into a better one? What are the things that continue to make sure that you have the fire extinguishers there in case the fire starts to rage out of control, right? Now, Amy's asking, what is the minimal acceptable outcome? The minimal acceptable outcome can change depending on who or what you are or what your business is, right? But you have to decide what is the minimum that I'm willing to accept. And so I said before, like for some people, the minimal acceptable outcome is just survival. I just want to get through it, right? Think about it in terms of, again, using your house as an example. If a fire, let me look at it this way. So the optimal outcome would be that I build a house and it is fully furnished and it's exactly the way that I want it, right? So call it $1 million home. The minimal acceptable outcome might be that I build the house, but I don't have all the furniture in it, right? I have to go out and get it. But at the end of the day, when construction is completed, everything is up to code. I can live there. Even if I don't have any furniture, I can live in this home and it's mine outright. And so you get to define whatever that looks like for you. But defining it is necessary, because what will happen is if you don't know, if you're only looking at the ideal optimal outcome, if you're only looking at the mountain peak, and you're not looking at, okay, what are the other options that are available to me? Or what are the things that I'm willing to accept if I don't get there? And it's not that there's not an all or nothing mentality, but people talk about burning the boats and going all in and things of that nature. But there has to be a minimal acceptable outcome, because oftentimes the ideal optimal outcome may not be available to you under the conditions that you began with, right? Those conditions can change. So for a lot of people, for instance, they built businesses in great economic weather, and then when the economic storms come, they have nothing that they can fall back on. And so it's boom or bust for them. So what's the minimal acceptable outcome, right? It becomes a benchmark, exactly. But you have to be clear on what that benchmark is so that you know that you have engineered everything to be able to hit that mark. So it's not to hit the ultimate upside. It is, so there's a concept I learned from Nick Peterson called raising the floor, right? Which I think he got from Dan Nicholson. But the idea of raising the floor is simply that if I have to do my very best, if I have to perform at peak performance every single time to get this goal, is that a sustainable amount of effort, right? And the truth of the matter is it's not. If I have to do 1,000 push-ups every single day to be able to hit my goal, is that sustainable? Probably not. So the idea of raising the floor means that what I can do is I can always add I can add 1 degree of acceleration, 1 degree of growth every single day. And if I can do that, then I can hit my goal. It makes hitting my goal inevitable. It may be slower, but here's the thing. What we don't factor in is the compound effect of doing something over time, 1% over time, right? So 1% over time, I'm doubling my output from yesterday. Now, as I add 1% every single day over a year's time, I am 365% of what I used to be. So I'm better than 3.5 times as good as I was in a year. But the compound effect is that, and what we don't often take into place, is that we get more efficient over time as well. So by the time you get to, for instance, 10 push-ups a day or 20 push-ups a day, you really have enough strength to do 30 or 40. And so you can begin to push that. But the idea is that you don't have to push it to get the outcome that you want, right? So if you're adding 1 new client a day, if you're adding 10 new customers a day, if you're getting 50 sales a day, right? And that is what is the minimal acceptable outcome, or the thing that you can continue to build upon going forward, that makes it an ideal acceptable circumstance, right? If you have to do it every single day, if I have to do 50 every day versus being able to do 5 a day and being able to add 1 a day and be able to inevitably hit my goal, that is a very different thing. And so what a lot of companies are built on, they're built on this hockey stick level growth. They've spiked in the growth. We see that in crypto, right? And so people are counting on it to go up and up and up all the time. When in reality, nothing can always go up. It's a law of gravity. What goes up must come down. The thing is, how far down do you come, right? How do I make sure that I don't crash and burn is a thing. Now, quickly, I got to get through these other points, right? So, number two is, what one thing has to go right to achieve your ideal outcome, right? So what's the one thing that has to go right? And then how do I ensure that that is the one thing that always goes right, even in the midst of other things that I'm trying to do, right? So if I know, for instance, that I'm building a house and I need materials to build it, can I ensure that the deliveries always come on time? As long as the deliveries come on time, I can make sure that this thing gets built and hits my deadline, right? Or as long as I have the money in the bank at a certain point to be able to do this, then I'm good. Whatever that one thing is that has to go right, because if it doesn't go right, then everything else falls apart. That's the lead domino, right? So we want to make sure that that lead domino is always in place every single time. All right. So number three, what's the one thing you can never survive, right? If you're at war, it could be a nuclear bomb. It could be a bullet to the head. That's actually a great example. As a soldier, there are always casualties in war, but the casualties apply to death as well as life. Now, if I want to be able to survive, what's the one thing I need to be able to protect? I need to be able to protect my heart, protect my head, because I can lose a limb, a finger, a foot, whatever the case may be. Same thing is true in business. What can I afford to lose and still survive? Right? What's the thing I can never survive if it happens? And therefore I need to make sure I'm protecting against that thing first and foremost, right? Number four, the question is, what's your North Star for navigating decisions? In other words, what is the thing that determines whether I'm getting closer to or further away from what I want, right? And I love the juxtaposition of closer versus more, right? When you are saying, I want to get closer to this specific point, when I'm saying I want to get closer to this specific point, what do I need to be using as that GPS, that North Star, my navigational system? And that way I can impart which direction I need to go in every single time. All right. Number five, if I'm looking back from that point, right, I'm building the empire in reverse. So I'm already the emperor of this empire. I'm the empress of this empire. Who did I have to become to lead my business to that level? So I'm looking back and what were the skill sets that I had to develop? What were the things I had to have in place? What were the guardrails that were necessary? Right? How can I make sure that I'm always growing in that area to be that person? Because there is someone that you have to be able to lead your company. The law of the lid, as John Maxwell talks about, no business or organization will ever grow beyond the capacity of its leader and their growth. All right, number six, how can you make sure you win even if you lose? I got this question from Tim Ferriss. I was listening to Sean Perry talk about this in the interview on the My First Million podcast. He interviewed him for Milk Road. And Tim Ferriss was just saying that, how do I make sure that in any circumstance, even if I lose, it turns out to be a win? There's a lesson that I learned that I was able to turn around and spin out and create something else, right? What is the win in every loss? What is the lesson in every loss? What is the framework that I'm using to ensure that I'm extracting a win from every loss? Because you're going to lose. And the thing about it is too, again, it kind of goes back to, the focus on the ideal optimal outcome. So many people in crypto were always thinking about the upside. Well, if I put this amount of money in, I'm going to be a billionaire, right? And so everything was hinged on that. The thing that can blow you up though, is that if I put in more money that I can afford to lose, then there's nothing available to me. But if how can I make sure I win even if I lose? Well, what am I learning in the process of building this portfolio in crypto? Or what am I learning in the process of building this software? What am I learning in hiring these people? Yes, Amy, as long as you learn, you always win. But you must make sure that you're learning. There must be a process to extract the learning, right? So sports teams, they record the games and then they watch the film to ensure that they understand they've learned the lessons. This is what we did wrong. This is how we can fix it. And many people, from year to year, they're not doing review. They're doing the goal setting for the next year. They'll look at where they were and say, well, we didn't hit this target, so we'll set the goal higher or we'll do X, Y, Z. But not a lot of people are watching the game film to make sure that they win, even if they lose. Right? Number 7, last one. How did your obstacles become your greatest opportunities? So looking at the things that happened, but again, building the empire in reverse. Something happened. What did you have in place to ensure your obstacles became your greatest opportunities, right? It kind of relates to number 6, how you make sure you win even if you lose. But the framework of it is that there will be things that are in the way. How do we turn those things that are in the way into jumping off points instead of barriers or barricades, right? So we could go deeper, but I wanted to kind of bring that up. We're going to be doing more of these podcasts and discussions where we kind of talk a little bit more about how we're thinking about building these empires in reverse. How are we setting up the stop gaps? And it's not as sexy to think about insurance, right? It's not as sexy to think about that. But when the fire burns your house down and you have the money that you can use to rebuild it again, it's a beautiful thing. And the thing about that is, if you can rebuild it again, you don't actually lose. You may lose some time, but you can rebuild it faster. If you never have the insurance to be able to rebuild, what does that cost you? And for most people, they hit that barrier, they have that fire burns everything down because they didn't have anything in place. They had no fire retardant, they had no smoke detectors, they had no fire extinguishers. So those things were not ever there. They built everything for the upside and nothing for minimizing the downside. And so if you want to build an empire, you have to safeguard against the things that can destroy you before you even get started, and the things that will tear you down once you've built it, if that makes sense. All right. Let me know in the comments what you're discovering from this. If you're watching this on LinkedIn or Facebook, YouTube, whatever, let me know what you're discovering as we're continuing to build forward and continuing to learn more and more about what is possible in our businesses. If you're a leader, entrepreneur, executive, whatever the case may be, send me a message. Let me know if there's a way we can support you and what you're doing, and we can continue to work together if that's a good fit. We are always here to serve the entrepreneurial community, to serve the business community, to serve leaders. And whether you have a business or not, but especially if you do, how can we help you lean into building that empire so that you can create the impact? The good guys get to win. And I say guys in general. Good guys should win as well, right? All right. Thanks, Amy, for all your comments. I appreciate you. Thanks, everyone, for stopping in, even if just for a second. Share, like, subscribe, wherever you are, whatever platform you're watching this on. And we look forward to seeing you again on the next edition of the Power Lunch Podcast. As always, my name is Frederick Douglass Bussey. Ever forward.